Add a few other things to it. It is very important for this Senate to understand where we're coming from as First Nations, as chiefs of the Stoney Nakoda Nations. We've always had challenges placed before us, not just present, but in the past as well. Former chiefs, our grandfathers, our forefathers have always fought for their rights as the Aboriginal people across this country. So it's proud to say that I'm here to continue that challenge, that fight for our nation members back home to have a better future, for our children to prosper, for our communities to be sustainable, to have economic opportunities, for us to provide those options and create a better future for our community. Thank you. Ishnias.
Mr. Seymour, have you got a short presentation?
Yes, sir.
I'd like you to keep it tight so we can get in as many questions. I'm restricted for time because of the availability of the room, but I don't. I want to be fair about this so that all sides are.
I understand.
Okay, go ahead, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Now we go. It's an honor to be here, and first off, I'd like to provide you with a series of clarifications on our whole issue here, because we have terminology that we presented to everybody in the House and in the Senate dealing with vertical integration. And through the clerk, I submitted a glossary of terminology. And what we mean by that is connecting the business opportunities, employment opportunities between downstream operations in the oil industry to upstream operations and vice versa. And in downstream, we're talking about retail gas stations and bulk fuel storage facilities. And upstream, we're talking about oil and gas exploration, production wells, and refineries. And that seemed to be a concern last time around, and I hope that clarifies that. To clarify where we originated from and who we are, secondly, I must point out that through the consultation process with the Indian Resource Council, when they reached out to the downstream operations from the upstream oil-producing tribes of those 130, they approached a group at Poucette and asked them, what would you see as being beneficial to you in amendments to the Indian Oil and Gas Act? And we promptly replied, vertical integration, a financial program set up to provide for vertical integration, and they said value-added activities would also be appropriate. So at that point, we launched this independent lobby to instill in the legislation an item to provide for vertical integration and value-added activities. And we went to the appropriate bodies in a collaborative effort, and we are a collaboration of the Indian Resource Council, the Akwesasne Petroleum Co-op, and the Ontario Fuel Handlers Association, and independent wholesale dealers and retail stations. And at the Annual General Assembly of the Indian Resource Council, our issue was put on the table, discussed, and we voted on, and we got a resolution of approval, and similarly from the Akwesasne Petroleum Co-op. So with this approval and founding initiation, we launched the lobby, and we approached the House of Commons Standing Committee in 2002 with Clerk Elizabeth Kingston, who informed us that, who are you to be proposing legislation to change the law for the betterment of the Indian people? We, by our terms of reference, can only deal with bills, government bills that have been referred to us upon second reading. So we learned in the process that this is how the parliamentary procedure works. And so we went back to the government, and in a summit meeting with representatives from Indian Resource Council, Ernest Gray, myself, Julie Back-Skidders from the Akwesasne Petroleum Co-op and others, we met with executives of the Department of Indian Affairs. And at that point, they said to amend the legislation to provide for economic development is not within our mandate. It belongs within the mandate of economic development within the department. That was back in 2002. But since that time, in 2008, the department has been reorganized, and now Indian Oil and Gas and Indian Lands and Trusts are all part of economic development, because somebody in their wisdom realized that economic development for First Nations people requires land tenure security. So let me now clarify the misunderstanding we have with the minister. And understandably so, it's partly our fault, because in the last year we've had some extraordinary events in the Canadian parliamentary system. We had a cabinet shuffle early in the year, and then there was a historical event on July the 11th where there was the public apology on the residential schools case situation, and at that point we were going to make our submission to the minister, but within a week we were just amazed how progressive he started to move. Within a week he tabled amendments to the Indian Oil and Gas Act under Bill C-63, and then there was an election, and we had to wait for a new cabinet posting. Then there was a serious political coup that was organized. Then there was a parolement of Parliament, and so we couldn't wait any longer. In January, we submitted our letter explaining who we are, what we're proposing, and he, after the throne speech, reintroduced the amendments of the Indian Oil and Gas Act under Bill C-5, and it was verbatim, and I suspect there's a procedure that it has to be verbatim once it's reintroduced. And he submitted us a letter as of February the 25th, which has been circulated to everybody, 09, and he has invited us to participate in this process. So we haven't had time to sit down and discuss with him what we're actually proposing, because the matter has left his desk and is within the parliamentary legislative procedure. But we look forward to doing that, because we realize we're in a continuing progressive changing process here. Then fourthly, I'd like to clarify on the point of coming into force. From last week's questioning by Senator Lang to the minister, we discovered that the minister on this legislation, and this is key in all this discussion here today, this legislation, the government does not plan to bring into force until at least a year or a year and a half from now, it's sometime in 2010, because he's going to go back and reconsult with all First Nations on the development of enabling legislation as per what he's asking for right now in Parliament. Since last week, we checked with legal counsel, and that's a very significant aspect of the piece of legislation is the coming into force clause. It's not stated in any of the written documentation, but from his evidence, the minister said he's going to take at least a year, and you've heard others testify today that they're looking at something as much as 18 months to bring this into force. So in essence, what you have before you today in this legislation is simply an umbrella authorization given to the government to enter into discussions to develop regulations accordingly. So now what we are proposing is simply a funding program designed by First Nations people themselves. And as I said in the House proceedings, we don't want the government to just throw money at the problem. We want to design it in a manner that is very effective and will produce results. And what we did in our submission at the House, it's been tabled to you, it's circulated, we incorporated three concepts. Number one, the eligibility of the applicant. And under the eligibility of the applicant, we were very careful to broaden its scope, so it's not just the band councils of those 130 that are directly affected by oil and gas on their land. We want to broaden it all First Nations people, and we don't want to restrict it just to band councils. We want to have this for Indian businesses, individuals, and we were very careful not to stipulate on or off reserve, because as Senator Brazeau pointed out, how is this legislation going to impact the betterment the lives of First Nations people? By broadening the economic opportunities from the business and employment opportunities associated with oil and gas production from Indian land is exactly what we're asking for. And in the financial structure that we're proposing, we want a complete range of loans, loan guarantees, and grants. And if that type of financing was incorporated in the statute, as the minister says, the industry wants certainty.